When the saleswoman saw Elvis Presley walk through the doors of Madison Cadillac at 2 a.m. on a random Tuesday in July 1975, she thought she was dreaming. But what happened in the next 3 hours would become one of the most bizarre, heartbreaking, and beautiful stories in rock and roll history. By sunrise, 13 complete strangers would drive away in brand-new Cadillacs, and Elvis would be sitting alone in an empty showroom, finally understanding what he'd been searching for all along. But nobody knew yet that this wasn't about the cars at all. The neon sign of Madison Cadillac on Union Avenue in Memphis flickered against the hot summer night. Most of the city was asleep. The streets were empty except for the occasional taxi and the lonely sound of cicadas singing their endless summer song. Inside the dealership, Linda Thompson, the night manager, was doing paperwork at her desk, counting down the minutes until her shift ended at 3 a.m. It had been a slow week. Hell, it had been a slow month. The economy was in the toilet, gas prices were through the roof, and nobody was buying luxury cars anymore. Then she heard it, the unmistakable rumble of a big engine pulling into the parking lot. She looked up from her ledger and saw headlights cutting through the darkness. A white Stutz Blackhawk. Custom, expensive. The kind of car that only one person in Memphis would be driving at this hour. Elvis Presley. Linda's heart jumped. She'd worked at this dealership for 3 years and had sold exactly 2 cars to Elvis. Both Cadillacs, both pink, one for himself and one for his current girlfriend. But she'd never seen him come in at 2 a.m., never seen him come in alone. And when he stepped out of that car and walked toward the glass doors, she could see something was different about him tonight. He was wearing black pants, a black silk shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest, a heavy gold chain, and sunglasses, even though it was the middle of the night. His hair was longer than she'd seen it before, slicked back but messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked tired, not the kind of tired that comes from a long day at work, but the kind that lives in your bones, the kind that no amount of sleep can fix. Linda stood up and smoothed her skirt. Professional smile. Don't freak out. He's just a customer. A very famous, very wealthy, very troubled-looking customer. Mr. Presley, she said, as he pushed through the doors. Welcome to Madison Cadillac. We're actually closed, but for you, I want to buy a car, Elvis said. His voice was soft, almost distant, like he was talking to himself as much as to her. Of course. We have several beautiful models that just arrived last week. If you'd like to take a look at— No, Elvis interrupted gently. I want to buy all of them. Every car you've got on this lot. Every single one, Linda blinked. She must have heard him wrong. I'm sorry. Did you say? Every car, Elvis repeated. And now he was looking directly at her through those dark sunglasses. How many you got? Linda's mind raced. This had to be a joke. Or maybe he was drunk, or high, or having some kind of breakdown. But his voice was calm, steady, completely serious. We have 13 Cadillacs currently available. But Mr. Presley, that's over $200,000 worth of— Perfect, Elvis said, pulling out his checkbook. I'll take them all, but here's what nobody knew yet. Elvis wasn't buying these cars for himself. He wasn't buying them for his friends or his family or anyone he knew. What he was about to do would reveal a pain so deep, a loneliness so profound, that everyone who witnessed it that night would never forget it. Linda didn't move. She couldn't. Her brain was trying to process what was happening but coming up empty. Sir, I need to ask, what are you planning to do with 13 Cadillacs? Elvis took off his sunglasses, and that's when Linda saw his eyes. Red-rimmed, exhausted, sad in a way that made her chest hurt just looking at him. I'm going to give them away, he said simply. Give them away? To who? To anyone who needs one. Elvis looked around the empty showroom like he was seeing it for the first time. The cars gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Coupe de Ville, Eldorados, Sedan de Ville, all of them perfect, pristine, brand new. You ever feel like you got everything in the world, but you got nothing at all? Like you're surrounded by people, but you're completely alone? Like you could disappear tomorrow, and the only people who'd notice are the ones who want something from you? Linda didn't know what to say. This wasn't the Elvis from the movies or the concerts. This wasn't the confident, charismatic king of rock and roll. This was just a man, a tired, lonely, broken man who happened to be famous. Sometimes, Elvis continued, his voice barely above a whisper, you gotta do something that makes you feel alive again. Something that reminds you that you're more than just a name on a marquee or a face on a poster. You gotta connect with people, real people, not fans screaming at you or handlers managing you or executives wanting a piece of you, just people. Linda felt tears welling up in her eyes and she didn't even know why. Okay, she said softly. Okay, let me get the paperwork ready. For the next 30 minutes, Linda processed the sale of 13 Cadillacs to Elvis Aaron Presley. He wrote the check without hesitation, $217,000, nearly $250,000, just like that. Then he did something that made Linda realize this night was about to get even stranger. Now, Elvis said, I need you to help me find people to give these to. What? How? Elvis walked to the glass doors and looked out at Union Avenue. We wait. Sooner or later, someone's going to drive by. And when they do, we're going to give them a Cadillac. And that's when everything changed. Because what started as an impulsive act by a depressed millionaire was about to become a life-changing miracle for 13 people who desperately needed one. The first car didn't come by for 20 minutes. When it did, it was a beat-up 1967 Ford pickup truck, rusted and rattling, held together by duct tape and prayer. The driver was an older black man, maybe 60, wearing a work uniform with the name Charlie stitched on the pocket. He was probably heading home from a graveyard shift at one of the factories. Elvis stepped outside and waved him down. Charlie pulled over, looking confused and concerned. When he rolled down his window, Elvis leaned in with a smile. Evening, sir. I'm Elvis Presley, and I'd like to give you a brand new Cadillac. Charlie stared at him. Then he started laughing. Man, I don't know what kind of prank this is, but I ain't got time for... It's not a prank, Elvis said. I'm dead serious. See that showroom right there? Pick any car you want. It's yours. Free. No strings attached. Charlie stopped laughing. He looked at Elvis, then at the showroom, then back at Elvis. You're serious. As a heart attack, Charlie got out of his truck slowly, like he was afraid any sudden movement would break the spell. He walked into the showroom with Elvis and Linda following behind. He stood in the middle of all those beautiful cars, his calloused hands shaking. I drove a cab for 40 years, saved up for 23 years to buy my wife a decent car, but she got sick. Cancer. Every penny went to medical bills. She died 6 months ago. I've been driving that piece of shit truck because it's all I got left. Elvis put his hand on Charlie's shoulder. Which one do you want? Charlie wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The blue one. That blue sedan DeVille, my wife. She always said her favorite color was blue. Then it's yours, Elvis said. And just like that, the first car was gone. The second recipient came 20 minutes later. A young couple in their 20s, driving a Honda Civic with a just married banner still tied to the back. They were arguing when Elvis flagged them down. The argument stopped real quick when they saw who was standing in the middle of Union Avenue at 2:30 in the morning. Y'all married? Elvis asked. Yes, sir, the young man stammered. Just yesterday. Where you headed? We were trying to find a motel. We don't have money for a honeymoon. We spent everything on the wedding. We were just going to drive around until sunrise. Elvis smiled. Not anymore. Come inside. He gave them a white Eldorado convertible. The bride cried so hard she couldn't breathe. The groom kept asking if this was real, if there was a hidden camera, if they were going to wake up and find out it was all a dream. Elvis just handed them the keys and said, Go make some memories. Life's too short to spend your wedding night driving around looking for a cheap motel. But wait, you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. Because the third person to receive a car would reveal the real reason Elvis was doing this. The heartbreak he'd been carrying alone for months. The third car went to a middle-aged woman named Patricia. She was walking down Union Avenue at 3 a.m. in a nurse's uniform, exhausted, carrying a bag of groceries. Elvis pulled up next to her in one of the Cadillacs. "Ma'am, can I give you a ride?" She looked at him suspiciously. "I don't get in cars with strangers." Smart woman. "But I promise I'm harmless. I'm Elvis Presley, and I just bought every car at that dealership over there, and I'm trying to give them away to people who need them." Patricia laughed. "Elvis Presley. Sure you are. And I'm Dolly Parton." Elvis took off his sunglasses. Patricia's mouth fell open. "Oh my God, you're really him." "I really am. And I really do want to give you a car." "Why are you walking at 3 a.m.? "My car died 3 weeks ago. Can't afford to fix it. I work double shifts at Baptist Memorial Hospital. I walk 2 miles each way. Every day." She paused. "I got 2 kids at home. Their daddy left us 2 years ago. I'm just trying to keep food on the table." Elvis's jaw tightened. "Come with me." He gave her a gold Coupe de Ville. When she asked why he was doing this, Elvis said something that made Linda cry. "Because my mama used to walk to work. Rain, snow, heat. Didn't matter. She walked because we couldn't afford a car. And every time I saw her come home with blisters on her feet, I promised myself that if I ever had money, I'd make sure no mother ever had to walk like that again. My mama's gone now. But you're not. So this one's for her. And for you." The night continued like that. Car after car, stranger after stranger, each one with a story that broke Elvis's heart a little more, and healed it a little more at the same time. A Vietnam veteran who lost both legs in combat. Elvis gave him a Cadillac with custom hand controls. A teenage girl who was working 3 jobs to pay for community college. Elvis gave her a red Eldorado and told her to quit one of those jobs and focus on her studies. An elderly couple celebrating their 50th anniversary. Elvis gave them a silver sedan de Ville and asked them what the secret to a long marriage was. The old man said, "Forgiveness. You gotta forgive each other every single day." Elvis nodded quietly, thinking about his own failed marriage. A janitor who had been saving for 10 years to buy his daughter a car for her graduation. Elvis gave him a pink Cadillac and said, "Give it to her tomorrow. Tell her it's from her old man who loves her enough to work every day of his life for her." By 5 a.m., 12 cars were gone. Only one remained, a black sedan de Ville, the most expensive one on the lot. Linda assumed Elvis would keep that one for himself. But then a police officer walked in. Officer James Rodriguez had been patrolling Union Avenue when he saw all the commotion. He came in to check on things, make sure everything was legitimate. When he realized what Elvis was doing, he just stood there, shaking his head in disbelief. "You gave away 12 Cadillacs tonight?" Rodriguez asked. 13 if you'll take this last one," Elvis said. "Sir, I can't accept." "You got kids?" 3, 2 boys and a girl." "You spend enough time with them?" Rodriguez's face fell. "No, I work 60-hour weeks, overtime pay, trying to save up to move them to a better neighborhood. But I barely see them anymore." "Then take this car," Elvis said, pressing the keys into his hand. "Sell it if you want. Use the money to cut back your hours. Spend time with your kids. Because I promise you, when you're my age and you look back at your life, you won't remember the overtime checks. You'll remember the moments you missed. But what you're seeing now is just the beginning." Because what Elvis did after giving away the last car would reveal the real heartbreak behind his generosity. Rodriguez took the keys with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Mr. Presley. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll be a good father. That's all the thanks I need." After Rodriguez left, the showroom was empty. Dawn was breaking over Memphis. painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Linda sat at her desk, still processing what had just happened. Elvis stood in the middle of the empty showroom, hands in his pockets, staring at nothing. "Why did you really do this?" Linda asked quietly. Elvis was silent for a long time. Then he spoke, and his voice was so full of pain that Linda wanted to reach out and hug him like he was a child who'd gotten lost. "I turned 40 this year," Elvis said. 40 years old. And I realized something. I got more money than God. I got Graceland. I got cars and jewelry and everything a man could want. But I don't got what matters. I don't got my mama. I don't got my marriage. I don't got my daughter living with me full time. I don't got real friends, just people who work for me. And last week, I had a thought that scared the hell out of me. I thought, what if I died tomorrow? What would people remember? That I was famous? That I was rich? That I sang some songs? And I realized, I don't want that to be my legacy. I don't want to be remembered as just an entertainer. I want to be remembered as someone who gave a damn. Someone who helped people. Someone who used what he had to make other people's lives better. He turned to look at Linda, and she could see he was crying behind those sunglasses. Those 12 people tonight? 13 counting the cop? They're gonna remember this night for the rest of their lives, and maybe, just maybe, one of them will do something kind for someone else because of it. And that person will do something kind for someone else. And on, and maybe that's how you change the world. Not with music or movies or fame, but with kindness, one person at a time. Linda walked over to him and hugged him. Elvis tensed for a moment, then relaxed, letting someone comfort him for once instead of the other way around. They stood there for a few minutes, two strangers connected by an extraordinary night, while the sun came up over Memphis. "You changed 13 lives tonight," Linda said. "That's not nothing." "It's not enough," Elvis whispered. "It's never enough. Hold on, don't miss this crucial detail." Because what Linda didn't know was that this wasn't the first time Elvis had done something like this. And it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 2 years, Elvis would give away over 100 cars to random strangers. He would pay hospital bills for people he'd never met. He would send anonymous checks to families about to lose their homes. He would become a silent angel to hundreds of people who never knew they were being saved by the king of rock and roll. But here's the tragic part. Despite all that generosity, despite all that kindness, Elvis still felt empty. Because you can't buy your way out of depression. You can't give away your loneliness. You can't heal your broken heart by fixing other people's problems. 2 years after the Cadillac night, Elvis would be dead, found alone in his bathroom at Graceland, 42 years old, gone too soon, and the world would mourn the king of rock and roll. But in a small house in Memphis, Charlie was still driving that blue sedan DeVille, thinking about his wife and thanking God for Elvis Presley. The young couple was still together, still driving that white Eldorado, still telling the story of their magical wedding night. Patricia, the nurse, was still taking care of patients, but now she drove to work in her gold Cadillac, arriving with enough energy to give her kids breakfast before school. The Vietnam veteran was driving himself to physical therapy appointments. The college girl graduated and became a teacher. The elderly couple took road trips across America in their silver Cadillac, making memories in their final years together. Officer Rodriguez cut back his hours, coached his kids' little league teams, and never forgot the night Elvis Presley taught him what really mattered. 13 lives changed forever by one night of generosity. 13 families who would tell their children and grandchildren about the night they met Elvis Presley. And he gave them more than just a car. He gave them hope, dignity, and a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Linda Thompson never sold another car again. She quit the dealership 2 weeks later and became a social worker, dedicating her life to helping people in need. When asked why she changed careers, she always told the same story. The story of the night Elvis came in at 2 a.m. and reminded her what it means to be human. You won't believe this, but the ripple effects of that single night would continue for decades. Charlie's granddaughter would become a doctor, inspired by her grandfather's story about unexpected kindness. The young couple's daughter would grow up to run a charity that provides cars to low-income families. Patricia's son would become a minister, preaching about the power of generosity. Officer Rodriguez's daughter would join the Peace Corps, spending years helping people in developing countries. All because one lonely, depressed, heartbroken man decided to do something that made him feel alive again. All because Elvis Presley walked into a car dealership at 2 a.m. and reminded 13 strangers that they mattered. Years later, when people would ask Linda about Elvis, about what he was really like, she would get tears in her eyes. "People think they knew him," she'd say. "They saw him on TV, in movies, on stage. They thought he was just this larger-than-life figure. But I saw the real him. I saw a man who was so lonely he couldn't sleep, so sad he couldn't stand being alone with his thoughts, so desperate to feel something real that he gave away $250,000 just to see strangers smile." He wasn't a king that night. He was just a man trying to find meaning in a life that had lost it. The black Stutz Black Hawk was still sitting in the parking lot when Elvis finally left that morning. He stood next to it for a moment, keys in hand, looking back at the empty showroom. Linda stood at the door watching him. "You okay, Mr. Presley?" she called out. Elvis turned and gave her a small smile. "You know what? For the first time in months, I think I might be." But he wasn't. Not really. The emptiness would come back. The depression would return. The pills and the loneliness and the weight of fame would crush him slowly over the next 2 years, until there was nothing left. But on that night, for those few hours, Elvis Presley was exactly who he wanted to be. Not a superstar, not an icon, not a commodity to be bought and sold. Just a man helping other people. Just a human being connecting with other human beings. Just someone who gave a damn. And maybe that's the real tragedy of Elvis Presley. He spent his whole life trying to escape fame, trying to be normal, trying to connect with people in a real way. And the only times he succeeded were in moments like this. Moments that nobody knew about. Moments that never made the news. Moments that happened in the middle of the night, when no one was watching, and there were no cameras, and no managers, and no expectations. Just Elvis being Elvis. The real Elvis. The one his mama raised. The one who remembered what it was like to be poor. The one who never forgot where he came from. The one who understood that money and fame meant nothing if you weren't using them to help others. That morning, as the sun rose over Memphis and the city began to wake up, 13 families woke up with new cars in their driveways and tears of joy in their eyes. And Elvis Presley drove home to Graceland, alone in his Stutz Black Hawk, wondering if what he'd done that night was enough. Wondering if he'd ever feel truly alive again. Wondering if kindness could save him the way it had saved those strangers. It couldn't. But that doesn't make what he did any less beautiful. That doesn't make those 13 lives any less changed. That doesn't make his generosity any less real. Because at the end of the day, we're not measured by how long we live, or how famous we become, or how much money we make. We're measured by the lives we touch, by the kindness we show, by the moments when we choose to be human instead of hiding behind our walls and our fears and our pain. Elvis Presley gave away 13 Cadillacs on a random Tuesday night in July 1975, and in doing so, he proved that even the loneliest person in the world can make a difference. Even the saddest soul can bring joy to others. Even someone who feels completely empty can fill other people with hope. That's the night Elvis bought all the Cadillacs. But really, he didn't buy them. He gave them away. He gave away cars and dignity and hope and proof that miracles still happen. He gave away pieces of himself, trying desperately to feel whole again. And for 13 lucky people, he did more than change their lives. He reminded them that in a world that can be cruel and unfair and heartbreaking, there are still good people. There are still moments of unexpected grace. There are still nights when Elvis Presley shows up at 2 a.m. and tells you that you matter, that your struggles are seen, that someone cares enough to help. That's the legacy he left that night. Not just cars, but hope. And that, more than any song or movie or sold-out concert, is what makes someone a king. Tell us in the comments, have you ever received an unexpected act of kindness that changed your life? Have you ever given something away just to feel alive again? Do you think money can buy happiness, or only temporary relief from sadness? Let us know what city you're watching from today. Subscribe to our channel for more emotional and untold stories of Elvis Presley, the human side of legends, and the moments that prove compassion can change lives. Hit the bell to never miss a story that matters.